Hello guys, and welcome back to the Ascending Souls podcast, and this is the third one we've done now, the third podcast, and today we want to kind of go into a different subject that we haven't actually gone into before. We're trying to keep this channel as varied as possible, trying to give our perspectives on a lot of different issues, trying to branch out. We don't want to specialise in one kind of thing. We want to talk about basically just what we find interesting, and we hope you guys find it interesting too. That's why you're tuning in to us. But before we get on to the podcast, I'd like to say welcome, Jack.
Hello guys, and just want to say thank you if you have watched our first couple of videos. We want to show our gratitude for that. This week we're going to be talking about UFOs. Now, as Alex said, we want to branch out and we want to hear from you too. If there's anything in particular you'd like to hear us talk about, we'd love to hear from you. It could potentially be our next podcast. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Also give us a follow on Instagram, which is Ascending Souls.
There is an underscore underneath Ascending Souls. Sorry, after Ascending Souls on Instagram as well. So Ascending Souls underscore. That's our Instagram. We have only recently started it, so there's not a lot of posts on there, but we're going to try and keep updated with content every day. Try and keep you guys in the loop of what we've been doing and what we've been taking an interest in. Obviously, anything that I say or we say that we've got links for, they will be all in the description. There will also be a link to our first and second podcast. The first podcast is a good one to listen to if you want to understand what we're trying to do with the podcast and what kind of direction we want to take it.
Definitely, and we'd love to just give people an awareness of what's really going on in the world, from issues past and present. We'd like to just give you guys a basic understanding. We're going to be talking about all sorts of different genres, and it's going to be an interesting journey, and hopefully we can give you something to learn, and hopefully we can learn from you guys as well. If there's stuff we haven't heard of before, it would be good.
Yeah, and like we say, we urge you to ask us questions and keep engaged with us. That's what we want. We want to create a community here. That's what we're looking to do. Anyway, so let's move on to the subject of today. And the first thing we'd like to talk about is obviously UFOs, as Jack mentioned. But we stumbled across a podcast that was released about a year or two ago, and it was with George Knapp. And I can't remember the other guy, but they specialised. Basically, George Knapp was the first guy that ever interviewed Bob Lazar. Now, if you don't know about Bob Lazar, don't worry, we've got a few facts here. We're going to tell you about Bob Lazar's story, what we think of it, what we think, it could be the reasons why, just give our perspective on the situation. So, obviously, if you haven't heard of Bob Lazar and it's the first time hearing it, we're going to give you some information, but we do urge you to go and check that out. And I will leave a link in the description to the podcast that Bob Lazar did do with Joe Rogan, so you can go and check that out. He gives a great overview of his story, his perspective, but you can hear it from his own mouth. But if you want to hear from our perspective, here we go. So Bob Lazar was born on January 26th, 1959. Now, the claims are that he's an American conspiracy theorist who claims to have been hired in the late 1980s to reverse engineer extraterrestrial technology. Located in S4 in Nevada, several kilometers south of the well-known Area 51.
Now, it's very interesting because a lot of experiments and a lot of information that Bob Lazar learnt has now came to great relevance in today, and with what we know.
Yeah, one of the famous, I guess you could say, predictions, even though it wasn't a prediction on Bob Lazar's half. One of the things that he talked about in his case was element 115. Now, the interesting thing about element 115 is that it didn't exist in the 1980s. It wasn't on the periodic table. It hadn't been discovered yet. And Bob Lazar was talking about this in the late 80s. Now, what actually happened is in 2003, it got discovered by some Russian scientists. And it's a synthetic chemical element with the symbol MC. and the atomic number 115. Now, it was first synthesized in 2003 by a joint team of Russian and American scientists at a joint institute for nuclear research in Dubna, Russia. Now, I don't know what you think of this, Jack, but I think it's pretty crazy, and it says a lot about Bob's story, the fact that element 115 wasn't even discovered by the time he was telling his story. I mean, no one even knew about it. It wasn't common knowledge within the science community. And it was quite interesting to see that 15 years later, the one thing he was talking about then becomes true, and they discover it. I mean, it's absolutely
it's
crazy.
Quite extraordinary for what was around in the 80s and how far the world's come in terms of technology. It's quite extraordinary. We linking back to George Knapp, who interviewed Bob Lazar back in the 80s when element 115 Bob conducted an experiment and got his friends to record it, and George showed the footage, and he knows he's no scientist, but what he saw looked like light was being bended by this element, and it could only been produced in small quantities.
Yeah, that's one of the important distinctions to make, is that element 115, it wasn't, just the fact that we've discovered it doesn't mean that we can do loads of stuff with it, use it for its material properties. It's not the case. The only way that we can create element 115 is through the hydrogen colliders. Now, I may be wrong about that. It might not be the only way, but I know it's the main way in which that we're creating. And we're creating very small dosages. About 4 atoms of element 115 are produced. So we're creating very, very, very minute dosages of element 115. So it's not like we know the properties, what we can use this for. Lazar claims he examined an alien aircraft that ran on antimatter reactor powered by element 115. In modern physics, antimatter is defined as matter which is composed of the antiparticles or partners of the corresponding particles of the ordinary matter. So what that basically means is the ordinary particles of matter, it's basically the antiparticles. It's the opposite. Now, antimatter has been a discussion point within the science community for a while. Dark matter, dark energy. And we don't understand it. We kind of feel it has ties to black holes, and we kind of linking it to other aspects, of the universe, but it's not something that we know a lot about.
It's all very unknown, and that's what's very intriguing. That's what's got all these scientists looking at this and thinking, right, if we can get this right, what benefit could it be for the human race?
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually, with element 115 and everything surrounding it, because it was basically it was like the fuel for this spacecraft.
It was the breakthrough.
Yeah, it was what was used to help fuel this spacecraft that Lazar that claimed to work on. Now, I've gone through the podcast. I've listened to it. Now, one of the things Lazar claims is that at some point walking around S4, I think he was there for less than a year. He wasn't there, for years on end. He was there for a very short amount of time, and
he wasn't actually told a lot by the government, because he was there for the government. He was only told what to do, what to work on, and the other scientists he was working with, they weren't allowed to communicate with each other regularly. They weren't allowed to ask questions. They were sort of just got told to, hey, look, we've got this over here, you need to work on this and just tell us what you find.
Yeah, that I think that always happens within government. If you're ever working on anything a bit secret that you don't want the public to know about, that's common practice.
The less you know, the better for them.
Exactly. One of the things Bob Lazar talks about, I found this very interesting, the tactic that the government can use to know who leaked the information. Even if you don't release your name, there's ways in which they know it's you. And one of the ways that they do this, and it's quite interesting actually, if you've been asked and you've been assigned to a task, or a project or an experiment, they give you basically a brief overview, and they'll give you a pamphlet basically on what you're going to be working on, what the other experiments are happening in that department, giving you kind of common knowledge of what's going on. But what also gets thrown in there is some crazy kind of experiments that they aren't really working on. And what they do is that they put these in the pamphlet. So let's say I got assigned to a task on, I don't know, working with antimatter for the UK government. Now, they would give me a pamphlet, this is what we're doing, this is what we want you to do, we don't want you focusing on this, we just want you focusing on this part. And what they'd also do is include some crazy experiments, made up things that they know is not real.
Because if they know the real information gets leaked, it counteracts each other.
Right. And what happens is, so let's say I find out some information about antimatter the UK doesn't want me to know about, but I also know about these experiments that they told me about that don't go on, but I think they go on. So what happens is, I may go to a reporter, I may go to someone and say, I worked here, I've got this information. Now, the key part in this is the false information that the government give you, because what happens is, if I start saying, well, actually I was working on this course and I was assigned to this project, but you know what was also going on was this and that. Now, if you start bringing up them false claims, the government know that they gave you that pamphlet with them false claims on. So it's a way of identifying who's ratting them out. And Bob Lazar said that this is one of the things that happened to him. Not that he was releasing information it turned out not to be true, but in the pamphlet he was given, there was a lot of experiments on there that claimed to be working on different things that he was very sceptical of. He knew their approach, he knew what they were trying to do, and wasn't, gonna fall over that easy. He's not that stupid. And when you listen to Bob Lazar and you listen to his story,
he's a very intelligent guy, very intelligent. He knows what he's talking about, and he's probably been in places and learned things that many of us will never know. Things he's seen, the public will never ever hear about. And that's linking back to tactics that the government use. They will give true facts and they'll give false facts. So if the person was to link it out to the public, then the stuff that's not true, it will make them look crazy. Well, this ain't true, so that can't be true. And that's a way of the government keeping it classified.
Yeah, it's all with that idea. If you put something too ludicrous out there, then people are gonna not even believe the stuff that is true. It's a very clever tactic used by the government, and it's probably been used for hundreds of years. I wouldn't doubt that for 1 second. But obviously, yeah. So we're gonna carry on. So Lazar starts working at S4, working on the craft, trying to work out how it's working. Basically, he was told to reverse engineer this spacecraft. He wasn't told anything about its origins, wasn't told where it's found, wasn't told about who operates it. All that he was told was, you need to reverse engineer this. Now, he wasn't allowed access to the spacecraft. He was actually working on the reactor. Now, the reactor had been taken out of the craft and he was working on it in a separate lab. But he does recall one time of being out on the airfield and he see this thing fired up. And he talks about how it didn't really dawn on him that it could have been something from out of this world until that day. Because he went out there and there was 2 spacecrafts. If I recall correctly, there was 2 spacecrafts. And one of them had just lifted into the air and started hovering about. And they said these were routine kind of flight checks, and the US government were trying to work out how to operate these things, reverse engineer it, create them for themselves so they can use them for themselves. And he said there were particular days that they would do this, they would have schedules. And it wasn't until that day that he had seen that aircraft fly that actually dawned on him that actually this could be something from another world. And obviously Lazar started questioning it. I think this was more the stage where he was thinking to himself, look, I may need to get this information out there. I think that was a
turning point for him. He thought it was too crazy for people to not know about it. They felt the public had a right to.
Yeah, and this happens a lot with, you know, honest people who are working on these projects. You know, because you don't think there's hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe even more working on projects like this secretly, and you know, you do start to wonder, do none of them even question, should I release this, should I, you know, you start thinking about that. But you got to understand the government have holds over people, whether it's family, whether it's money, whether it's property, whether it's anything, they're going to have holds over you.
And Bob Lazar was saying when he was given these projects, the briefings were very, very brief. There was little information given to him, so he couldn't ask more about it. And it's crazy how these things happen and people know nothing about it. To this day, people are still questioning, are UFOs real? Where do they come from? Is there life outside this world? And people don't know a thing about it.
Yeah, and you know, as this story kind of started gaining publicity in the 80s, and people were coming a lot more accustomed to his story, a lot of people started looking into the back history of Bob Lazar and wanting to know, you know, where he went to school and university and everything. So Bob Lazar was actually, he was approached by someone who was within that line of work because of his invention of a jet-powered car. And it sounds crazy, and it just shows the intelligence of Bob Lazar. He's a very, very intelligent man, very intelligent. And if anyone's sitting here saying, "Oh, he's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's doing," I mean, come on, the guy's worked on, you know, I mean, the guy built a jet-powered car. I mean, you can't get any better than that.
On a Honda as well.
A Honda, wasn't it a Honda engine or something? Honda engine, jet-powered, big, massive jet car on the back. And he made local newspapers. And that's how they actually found out about Bob Lazar. And
that's
he was
when he
then
started
approached.
to get in the public eye a bit more.
Yeah, well, it was a local newspaper, so at the time he wasn't like he was famous. He was known around the town that he lived in. Everyone knew him as the crazy guy with the jet-powered car. Because you could hear the jet-powered car fire up from a mile away, you know. Yeah, you gotta understand. You know, when you're next to a plane and you hear it, you know, wind up, it's immensely loud. I mean, so you can't understand what it would have been like in a small town in the middle of Nevada when you've got a jet-powered car flying about. You know, yeah. it's gonna raise some heads.
And especially in the late 80s, around that time, where technology wasn't the best, it was all coming out, and then all of a sudden you've got this massive jet engine on top of a car. It's crazy.
So Lazar claimed that the site consisted of concealed aircraft hangars built into mountainside. Lazar said that his job was to help with the reverse engineering of one of the 9 flying saucers, which he alleged were extraterrestrial in origin. Now, one of the things that led Bob Lazar to believe that it was from another world and wasn't from our world was the way that it worked. Like we said, antimatter. Now, we don't know a thing about antimatter. And Bob Lazar, in the podcast with Joe Rogan, now we're going to give you kind of a brief overview of Bob's story, but we really do urge you to go and listen to him firsthand. You're going to get a lot more sophisticated opinions, and you're going to hear it from his mouth. You know, this is what you want. You want to hear it from him because he can go into a bit more of the scientific side. But one of the things that stood out to him was the antimatter, and he starts explaining how it works. And what he says is that the reactor creates a bubble, would you say, of energy. And what happens is this bubble around the craft doesn't get affected by gravity. Kind of creates its own
energy
gravity.
Force field.
Yeah, and it doesn't. There's no friction. So this is why when you're building planes and everything, you need to put the wings into your account. Yeah. You have to put wind resistance, all these different elements that are going to affect the plane flying. Now, what he said was it created a bubble around it where there was no space and time, and it just kind of floated through space. And that was, you started realising this isn't something that we created here on Earth. It's not possible.
I think that was a turning point where he starts beginning to question it himself. He knows how vital it is that this force field that no one's seen before, all of a sudden in front of his own eyes, it's really crucial for him to take this information in and pass it on to others, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason we wanted to mention Bob's story is because recently we've seen a big urge of UFO stories, alien stories coming out in the media, in the mainstream media. And we've been questioning, why is that now? I mean, the mainstream media has taken, in the past, it's taken a conspiratorial approach to people who believe in aliens and kind of, question.
Try to brush them off as crazy.
Exactly, and try and give this impression that these people are just unstable mentally, they don't know what
they're going on about.
Exactly.
But you often find these people, when you do your own independent research about them, you find they're very intelligent people who have had great education, who have done great things, achieved great things.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that dawns on me, and it dawns on me daily, is the amount of cases, of cases that we get around worldwide of seeing UFOs. Now, a lot of people might say, well, a lot of people would lie. That's fine. I understand that human beings lie. It happens. People, and we don't understand the full reasons. Maybe it's attention, maybe it's money, maybe it's whatever. You don't know the motivation behind people who lie. But when you've got so many cases every year worldwide, you have to start saying there must be some truth to this.
Definitely.
I mean,
what could it be out there?
Exactly. And to me, I can't imagine how. I mean, we started recently recently in our history, we started learning about exoplanets, and 4,000 have been discovered at this present time. But there was a time when we thought the Milky Way is the only galaxy.
We genuinely believed it was
believed it. And what did we find? Actually, the Milky Way is one of hundreds of billions of galaxies.
And more each year, more information is starting to come out. Well, actually, this is out here. More planets, more galaxies.
And when you think about that, they say that every star that you see out there has at least one planet. So you start to think to yourself, well, if there's billions of stars only within our galaxy, just one galaxy, how many planets is there out there? And we've already found 4,000 exoplanets. Now, exoplanets, it's not as if you could just see a telescope and go, oh wow, it looks like Earth. It's not the procedure. It's not the procedure of how it works. It doesn't work like that. The way in which it works is they record the light of a star. And what they do, they monitor a star. And what you'll see is that the light, what they found is that the light will dim. Maybe it's for a day, maybe it's for two, maybe it's just for seconds. And then it will brighten again. And they were asking themselves, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why are we seeing stars dim and get brighter? What it actually was planets were passing in between where light was travelling to Earth from the star. And what they could end up doing was, because the light was travelling through the planet's atmosphere, you were able to record and measure what gases were present on the actual planet. And you're able to see which planets were most like Earth. And what they started finding was Earth-like planets are so common throughout the universe. It's ridiculous. And you think there's a time that we thought that Earth revolved. No, Earth was the central universe. Everything revolved around the Earth. Then we start building a better perspective. The sun. We all revolve around the sun. And people started thinking the sun is the centre of the universe. And you can see as these steps unfold that we're creating a bigger and bigger picture of what we know. And I think it's quite ignorant to think that we as human beings are the only intelligent life out there. And you think 13.7 billion years of life, and we've only been around at most 50,000 years.
It's crazy when you put that into perspective.
I mean, take them 50,000 years away from history. Minus that of 13.7 billion. You've still got 13.7 billion. And you're telling me in 13.7 billion years there's been no evolved intelligent life. I mean, it just, I don't see how people can be so ignorant. I mean, to me, it just seems like
and it's kind of
obvious.
Scary to be that ignorant, because if you don't keep an open mind to this, and you notice in the mainstream as well. I saw in the New York Post that they've started to post more regularly. I know the Tucker Carlson show once a month hosts a show purely on UFOs, and I think that's all of a sudden beginning to open up the idea to people that there could be something out there. And if to genuinely believe there isn't anything out there, if one day, I'm not saying this is going to happen, obviously this sounds very far-fetched, if something's to come out the sky and there's been signs of it before, if something's to come out the sky, we have no information about these things, we don't know what they are, they could have all the power, and you never know what's going to happen. It's crazy, it really is mind-blowing, but it's so interesting.
And one of the things that we wanted to do with the Bob Lazar story is that we wanted to kind of let you know about the Bob Lazar stories, get your thoughts on it and see what you think. Obviously, as we say, we urge you to go and check out the Bob Lazar podcast with Joe Rogan. Go and listen to him. I'm sure you'll find it very interesting. If you've already clicked onto this podcast, I'm sure you'll be very interested in Bob Lazar's podcast.
And we'd love to hear what you think too. It'd be very interesting. Do you believe in aliens?
Yeah, but and give your evidence for whatever your stance is on it. If you say no, give your evidence. We'd love to discuss it. Why you think that maybe there isn't, or maybe you think there is. I can't see a lot of people who are going to be saying no, there definitely isn't aliens. I can't see that there's going to be a lot of people, but there will be some people out there, and we obviously want to listen to your opinion. We want to hear what your stance is.
Definitely.
So the reason we brought up the Bob Lazar story is because actually one of the things that we want to talk about at the moment is the introduction of aliens to the mainstream media, and it's quite interesting to see this play out, because what we're seeing recently is a lot more alien stories within mainstream media, and we're starting to question why. Because when you look at events like this, you have to start questioning why, because we all know that anyone that kind of believes in aliens and has that kind of perspective, it's always been treated as a conspiratorial thinking. And you start to beg the question, well, why is it they're coming out in mainstream media now? And I never would have predicted that. I would never have predicted that. But one of the things that me and Jack was talking about was that we think that maybe it could be an introduction to the alien life per se.
Definitely a very soft, piece by piece of information, warming us up to the idea of aliens.
Yeah, and that's an important point that you made there, piece by piece, because one of the things that people got to realise is that if they were going to tell us about the existence of aliens, they're not just going to tell you that aliens exist. It has to be in a series of articles, of events, of situations, of bits of information. They had to graduate this, because now to the average Joe, maybe not to me and Jack, because obviously we believe in aliens, and we do believe that they've been present here. I mean, I generally believe, I can't speak for Jack, but I do generally believe they have been here for thousands of years before even we were.
Definitely, I believe that too.
Yeah, so sorry about that if you heard that there. So yeah, it's something that we take a stance on. But obviously with the government, I mean, to the average Joe, this is shocking news. And you've got to think about the religious institutes. How does this play into religion? Because a lot of religious institutes rely on the fact that aliens aren't real.
Definitely. The fact that they aren't real, and how can religions take that? They can't all of a sudden change their beliefs for something that they felt and believed in their whole lives, for all of a sudden for this piece of information to come out and change that. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it starts to beg the question, doesn't it? How is this going to affect the religious institutes? And what's even more interesting is the Pope. The Pope has been mentioning aliens recently. Kind of raising the question that they could exist, they might do, we might have some knowledge, and if anyone knows what's really going on, it's the Vatican. I mean, come on,
They're a powerful group,
a powerful institution that has been
around for years,
around for a very long time, and have always played a role within society, and how society, where it's been heading,
from keeping this from the public as well. You
Yeah.
think for all this time that the information on aliens, the fact that they aren't real as they say, all of a sudden, actually they could possibly be real. How do these religions, how will the government hold this? How will the governments deal with religions that will definitely, I can imagine they'll be coming out and strongly opposing the fact that aliens aren't real. Is it going to take for an alien to come from the sky and land next to them and say we are real? Because it's just going to seem ludicrous to them.
Yeah, and I think this is the issue that we're going to have, is that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to find it hard to deal with the information about aliens existing. I mean, you look at the amount of people that follow a religion, it goes against everything that they believe in. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of religious people out there who still do believe in aliens, and it wouldn't change their faith. And I'm neither here or there. I mean, if you want to be religious, if they're your beliefs, that's completely fine. But this is something that we're going to have to talk about. If we're going to introduce the idea of aliens into society, then we have to think about what
the
role
human race is going to think of it as one.
Yeah, and how do we deal with that collectively? How do we deal with that as a society? How are we going to integrate with aliens or with extraterrestrial? You know what? I think we're going to stop using the word aliens, because when you say alien, it has this stigma behind. I think we have to use the term extraterrestrial life. And how are we going to integrate with extraterrestrial life? One of the issues that I actually brought up, I mean, Elon Musk has been talking about going out and mining asteroids, and he has a target set on a gold asteroid. Now, the scary part about it is you might be thinking, oh wow, that's amazing, we can just go and mine gold from an asteroid, but it's not as simple as that. Now, you understand that the price of gold is set with the idea that gold is a limited resource.
It's very rare. That's what gives gold its value.
Very rare, and it's very sought after for its colouring, and obviously it's always been sought after in history. Now, you understand the price is set by how accessible it is. How are we able to access gold? Are we able to get gold? It's not the same thing as stone. It's very rare compared to other elements. Now, the estimation of the worth of this asteroid is 600 billion. And you're hearing me right, billion with a B. Now, you've got to think about, if that amount of gold was to hit our economy,
how would it be distributed?
Not even that, right? Because if you've got £6 billion worth of gold, that devalues the price of gold straight away. It's just not a limited resource at that point, and it can destabilize the whole economy. So we really got to start thinking about how we can integrate space exploration, think about how we can integrate it with society. Now, there could be plans behind closed doors that we don't know about, that they could be trying to introduce, that could be talking about this, who knows. But I think with the talk around space exploration with Tesla, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, with I can't remember the name of his company, but he also has a company who's going to be looking into space exploration. When you look at these companies talking about this and visiting Mars and all these different things that we're looking to do in the near future,
and you even look at the safety implications of it. How is it going to be safe to just go to the unknown and just start trying to, because you think asteroids are massive, and the speed they travel at, going up to the normal people, just humans themselves out there in space, it's just crazy. All that.
I think personally, if we're going to have commercial travelling commercial space exploration or anything like that, we're going to have to create different ways of exploring space. I don't think we're going to be able to use rockets. I mean, when you think about it, if the idea of UFOs are real, you know, they're using these spacecrafts that can just create, you know, a hole in space and time and just flow through it. Rockets seem very, very, very outdated, don't they? They seem like old technology, and I think we have to move past that. I think if we really want to move past, you know, being just a society that can only stay on our planet, we're going to have to move past rockets. It's not the way it's really not. And you got to understand, it takes us 6 months to get to Mars. 6 months. Think about that. If you want to go visit Mars, you've got to be in a spacecraft for 6 months. Do you think an 8-hour journey on a plane is bad?
Yeah, and you look at the body itself. How is the human body going to be able to cope being in the same whatever they're going to use to get up to there? How is that going to cope? The health implications after the travel, because you think if you go, how long are you going to be up there? If you're going to come back, that's another 6 months you need just to come back. In total, that's a year of travelling, and the strain that could put onto your body, and this is all unknown still as well.
Well, one of the things they said about it is that the first mission to Mars with the first recruits, they would have to die there. They would not be coming back.
Wow.
You know, wow. and they're looking to sign people up now. So, guys, if you want to go and explore Mars, you know where to sign up. We'll put a link down in the description. But obviously, no, you know, this is a real issue we do need to talk about. Is how we integrate space exploration, how we integrate UFOs and aliens into our own society, and how are we going to deal with it collectively? You know, it's something we really need to talk about, and it's coming closer and closer. You know, every day it's coming closer and closer, and you got to understand there's a mass awakening happening at the moment. You know, globally, a lot of people waking up to these things and understanding what's really going on in the world. You understand that for many years people have been fed this false perspective by the government of how the world works and how the universe works, and people are now
beginning to awaken and
understand.
It's very crucial for themselves and the human race all together, and it all starts from being a young child, all in school. What we learn, it's all from the government. It's all very specific. They don't want us to learn too much about UFOs. They don't want us to learn too much about tax and all this sort of stuff. And when you leave school, and I think being young adults, learning this stuff has been crucial to our awakening as well. And I think the more we've learned, that's why we feel it's so crucial that we give you guys this platform to be able to air your views, learn some facts, and just really get a broad idea of what's really going on in the world.
Yeah, and just a quick disclaimer. Obviously, Jack touched upon a point there. About how, you know, we feel this is our job to do this, you know, help contribute to the mass awakening globally and expose people to the truths of the world. We've been thinking about creating a podcast on give our views on how it was for us growing up, what it was like succumbing to this information, what it was like going through this awakening. And you know, we're all still going through this awakening. It's a never-ending process. You know, you're constantly learning. But
it's all part of the journey.
Yeah, and we'd like to give a podcast or a talk where we can explain to you guys how we dealt with that process, and you know, give our experience and what we've been through. That will be a separate podcast. Obviously, it won't be for today, but Jack touched upon it briefly there, and I just wanted to clarify that we do want to make a podcast on that. We want to talk about a bit more of our personal experiences, you know, because we want to integrate our personal experiences into this podcast, because we think it's really important that every perspective matters, no matter who you are. And that's one of the things that we want to do, is give our perspective, because we know that even if you may not agree, it's still valuable to people the same way in which your perspective is just as valuable to us.
Definitely. That's if you do genuinely believe aliens isn't real. That's why we'd love to hear from you, hear your perspective, because it's all about being able to have that broad view, and it's really interesting. Yeah,
so taking it back to present time. Obviously, we're talking about Bob Lazar, but we're going to bring it back to present time now. We're going to stay on the topic of UFOs. And there was an article that has been going about recently. Yeah, with yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot to mention what the day is for us today. It's the 9th of December 2020, on the day that we're recording this. And this came out yesterday, and it says the former head of Israeli space security program claims that aliens have been active on this earth for a while and have been working with the US on learning about the fabric of the universe. Now, the name of the guy is Haim Eshed,
and he's a retired.
I may be getting that wrong, by the way.
General who retired in 2011, and it's quite interesting. It always seems to be the US that have got these areas that are working on these elements, working on these spacecrafts, and it's quite interesting. It makes you wonder why the US, why not anywhere else, why not Russia? And it's not to say these things aren't happening in Russia, but for what the public do know, the US is a country that always pops up quite frequently regarding extraterrestrial life.
I personally think that is because the Americans aren't very good at covering up stuff. They're always getting exposed for war crimes or something going on in the world. And you look at other nations like the UK or Russia or anything like that, you never really see exposed documents on anything like that. You never. We're very tightly concealed with our information and what we get up to. The UK are very sneaky like that. We're very good with our security and privacy.
Definitely.
The Americans are just less good at that. Now, I don't know if that's intentional. Whether a lot of the stuff that's released is intentional. It's purposely released but made to look like it's been leaked. I don't know. There is obviously a lot of truth in that. I mean, the government do that to mislead people and send them the wrong way. I think that's what's happened with Area 51. I really do think Area 51 isn't the hub for alien craft in the way that people say. I think it's created that to then divert the attention away from where it's really going on.
Definitely, and that's a tactic the government seem to use frequently. They always seem to use a main idea which will get everyone's attention, but they'll also have other areas where that's actually where the majority of things are happening.
Yeah, and we'll give you an example of this. It doesn't relate to the UFO thing that we're talking about, but it does relate in the idea of how they use these tactics. When everything was going on when Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell was found, and it's obviously after Jeffrey Epstein had allegedly killed himself, there was obviously the big stories of Harry and Meghan. Now, it turns out that the same week all these stories are coming about Harry and Meghan and what was going on with them and were they going to leave the royal family, and was Meghan being horrible to Harry, was he controlling her?
It was massive. It was a massive thing, these royals all of a sudden wanting to leave.
Yeah, and you got to understand, right, the royal family aren't just famous in England. You know, they're not just. It's not just the UK. They're worldwide. I mean, I think it was.
Look at the Commonwealth.
William and Kate's wedding. I think it had over 1 billion people watching. So you know that's bigger than the UK population. Now, the same week that this was happening with Harry and Meghan, what else was actually happening was Maxwell. Actually, I may have got that wrong. It was Hillary Clinton's court process was going through.
Definitely.
And while these court processes were going on, obviously nothing was mentioned in the mainstream media. But the royals acted as a distraction for what was really going on. And this happened in the same week. Now you'll see, if you ever see any big stories like that, always question what is the diverted attention. Why are they diverting your attention to this story?
There's always a reason. When you look into the background of the stories, you always find there's a reason behind it, because you got to think, why that time, and I believe as well around that time when Hillary Clinton was going to the courts, I believe she didn't actually turn up for one of them.
Yeah, she didn't turn up, and I can't remember, but it was a few months later that she was having to have her next court hearing. and we didn't hear any updates on that at all. And the only way you're going to get access to this information is because of the community that's talking about it. It isn't something that's going to appear on ITV News. Oh, Hillary Clinton is, having to attend court.
Definitely, and it's not going to be on the BBC News at 5.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all part of the cover-up.
Exactly.
They really are.
So anyway, getting back to the story that we were talking about, we like to go on tangents there, don't we, Jack? But it's all for the greater good of the conversation. We want to keep the conversation flowing. Anyway, so the former head of the Israeli space security program claims that aliens have been active on this earth for a while and have been working with the US learning about the fabric of the universe. Now, my first question there, quickly, before we move on to the next point, why are the aliens looking for the US's help? I mean, come on. Are we supposed to be that gullible that we think that aliens need our help with learning about the universe? I mean, come on, man. Seriously, you really have to think that the human race are prestigious or have some sort of...
We link it back to the Bob Lazar story when he was working on Element 115. When he was looking at these spacecrafts, the force field they were creating around themselves, the humans, we knew nothing about them.
Yeah, we did not know how it worked. That's why he was assigned to the case. That's why he was reverse engineering it, because we did not understand. And I think you've got to be quite gullible to believe. I'm not saying that everything this guy is saying is wrong. I'm not saying that. I think there's definitely a lot of truth within what he's saying. But you understand, a lot of these people are employed to divert the attention and to give out misinformation. They might give you a hint of what's going on, but really they're there to just divert the attention. Now we're going to move on to the next point. Haim Eshed, the former head of Israel's space security program, claims that Trump's presidency had to end because he was going to blurt national secrets. Now, what do you think on that, Jack?
Well, I think it is very interesting. We know the story of the Trump versus Biden election has turned out to be quite messy. We look at the vote counting, how long it's really taken for America to come to terms with what's going on, and for it to end, I think it was for blurting.
Yeah, so basically, with my viewpoint on that, I really don't know what to believe. I'm under the impression that Trump and Biden, they're basically two people you're not going to want as your president, but one seems not as bad as the other, and I would say Trump definitely seems
more for the people in a sense.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. Even though we all know that is a common practice by politicians to get you on board with them, and we probably know that he's not for the people per se, but he has to create that kind of persona.
Yeah, he has to pretty much tell the public what they want to hear. I think Trump, in an interview, he was asked if aliens are real, and he was saying, well, I can't say, but he shrugged his shoulders and smirked as if to say, well, yeah, they are, but it's not for me to say. And that in itself, is it to say, well, I can smirk because I know soon something could be happening.
Yeah, and do you think that maybe that was the reason he wasn't able to continue his presidency? Definitely. I don't think for one sec
could that have been the tipping point? Could that have been too much in itself?
Yeah, my personal opinion, you may have a different opinion to me, Jack, but my personal opinion is that actually Trump and Biden are on the same team, and it didn't matter who was going to go in. I don't think that was the reason that the presidency didn't run. I think if you're looking at the articles that are being released by mainstream media, you can see that there isn't really the government aren't worried about people learning about aliens. I don't think. I think obviously with the president of the United States coming out and saying that aliens exist, yes, of course it's going to be big, but I don't think they're worried about it. And you understand that Trump acts as though he doesn't play by their games, but he's all part of the game, you know. They're all these people that have been put into place.
Public are just the puppets.
Just the puppets. You know, these aren't the people making the decisions. You know, Trump doesn't make the decisions on whether, you know, we pursue UFOs or whether we learn more about extraterrestrial. You know, Trump doesn't make these decisions. You know, military commanders who have security clearances, who are able to have access to the, you know, to S4, to have access to these deep underground bunkers that sit underneath the US. You know, these are the people who are making these shots, who are making these calls, not Trump. And if for 1 second, if you think for 1 second that Trump has any power over any decisions that the US makes, then you're very gullible.
Definitely, you take the example of governments as well. They've always got advisors for everything. They've got advisors about different things. They're never actually calling their own shots. Stuff that they probably don't even know nothing about. They've still got advisors to go to. It's never actually them themselves.
Yeah. So going back to the story of the of Hamish said. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, Jack, do you think this is related to the footage that was released last year by the Pentagon? Do you remember in April 2020, you had that footage of a UFO being chased on radar, and it was released by the Pentagon. Now, that for me was quite interesting. Whenever I see anything like that released by government, I always think that they're not there to just tell you. You know, they have a lot more information than what they're letting on. They're just giving you pieces of the puzzle.
Definitely, we take it back to giving us the information piece by piece. I don't think it is related too much. I think it does play a little bit of a part, but I don't think it was massive in it being an influence on the decision. I think when you actually look at the footage, you can see these things, as Bob Lazar said, very oval shaped. They all look very similar, and it's very interesting. I think the viewers, if you're listening, you should take a view and watch for yourselves. It's very interesting how these things moved, and it really gives us an idea of what could we expect one day if these things, we see them in the sky. I think it'd be cool for everyone to see. Yeah,
it's I personally think it is related in the sense of I think the two articles, as in the footage of the UFO and the Israeli, the former head of the Israeli space security program, I think these two incidences are related in the essence of they're both released to prep us on the idea of aliens. I think in that way they're related. They might not be related by they're the same people, whoever, but I do think there is a hidden agenda behind both of them. What we're going to say we're going to go to a quick break. After the break, we will be talking more about the subject. It probably won't be a long break for you, but we're going to take a quick little break for us, and we're going to be back in just 2 secs. So thank you guys, and tune in for part 2. Hi guys, and welcome back to part 2 of the Ascending Souls podcast, of Ascending Souls podcast 3. So we actually decided to kind of take it a different way with part 2, didn't we, Jack? We kind of have looked to take it on a different route. One of the questions that we wanted to talk about really was, is technology going to be the doom of the human race? And I mean, it's quite an important question. I think
it's definitely something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it's something that's not being, and it's coming ever so closely, isn't it? I mean, look at the way technology is developing nowadays, and what we're able to do, and think about how that has an effect on us as a society, and how we manage ourselves, and how it influences our decisions in life. And we've got to make sure that we're dealing with this properly. I mean, you understand, when we're dealing with newer technology, as in phones and tablets and YouTube and social media, I mean, this stuff has only been around for the past 10, 20 years. You know, it's not something that we actually know about and how it affects us. So it's quite interesting to see how things are playing out now. You know, we kind of grew up in that age of where technology and social media was just evolving into.
It was just coming out. You look at Facebook. I believe it came out in 2007. Twitter, I believe, was around that time as well. But you think everything then was just coming out. We was just getting a sort of a taster for what could the world be heading, and being able to create profiles around that time was all something new. All of a sudden you're getting these ideas of, you've got this phone, tablet in your hands, and you can create yourself how you ideally want to see yourself. You see in society nowadays posters, and we look at an example of skinny girls and fat shaming. People are wanting to go online now and create the ideal self so they don't feel as bad for themselves.
Yeah, and when we're having this discussion, there's a lot of things that come into this discussion. When you say kind of technology, it's a very broad term. And we left that kind of broad because we wanted to kind of talk about all different aspects. You know, how is our space developing program going to go on? You know, how's that going to develop?
On Mars.
Exactly, how's that going to develop? But then also, how are we going to develop social media, and how are we going to develop, you know, the internet, and how people interact with each other online? I mean, how are we going to develop that, and how are we going to evolve that to go with the times
without going too crazy?
Yeah, and there's a lot of risk with this, you know. Society hasn't played around. A society that we know of has never played around with this before, you know, and we don't really know what to expect. And in a way, it's kind of scary. But we need to know. We need to have a plan of what we're going to do, because I mean,
with how quickly it's evolving as well, there needs to be a clear plan.
A clear plan. I mean, you look at the amount of suicides that are happening in teenagers, and you know, I scroll through Instagram, and a lot of the time I see a lot of lost souls. You know, people who you could tell were putting up this image because they felt that putting up this image made them look more confident than they are.
Portray themselves as stronger than what they actually are.
Yeah, and I think Instagram promotes that. It promotes that kind of
ego building. Yeah,
and the more you're on Instagram, the more you're going to have a following, because the more active you are on there. The more active on you there, you're commenting, you're posting something, you're liking something, you're always engaged with something, and it's like a habit, and it becomes a habit for these people, and they can only think of social media and Instagram and Snapchat and messaging.
Like little boost of serotonin every day. Like, you got to keep topping yourself up, posting something what you're doing to make you feel better, because when you're feeling down, you feel like a lost soul. When you've got these bits of dosages of serotonin boosting, it makes you feel better. You're going to want to keep doing that every day, and you become more dependable on the technology, on the social media side of things as well, and it can be very dangerous.
And I think this is quite an important point to make, actually. I think you made a good point there. I think with a lot of teenagers, I mean, going into that kind of reality of being on social media, you can create yourself as anything that you like. I mean, you can post images, I've done this, I've done that. Post images that make you look cool, make you look creative, make you look crafty. You know, you can create an online persona. And I think a lot of children and kids are not being able to find their identity. And they use it as a way of exploring new identities. But the only problem with that is that you expose yourself to criticism. And children aren't developed enough to handle the criticism and handle the bad comments. I mean, you understand, when there's people in podcasts, and you know, when you've got, you know, YouTube channels like Sean Atwood or Joe Rogan, they've had time. I mean, even Sean Atwood has time dealing with trolls. You know, he finds it hard. But you understand, these are 40, 50-year-old men who are able,
who have got life experience
and confidence in themselves, and are able to ignore that. But for a 12-year-old boy, you know, posting
who's
stuff on social media,
learning and developing every day, who's still very young.
Exactly. He's not going to know how to handle them bad comments when they hit him. And this is why I think we're getting depression rates so high in the UK. I mean, it's skyrocketing. I mean, it's something that we've never seen before, and it's something that really needs to be addressed about. I mean, we talk about it, but it's not talked about enough. And this is all to do with how technology is integrating with our society, and it's an issue that we really need to talk about. You know, how are we gonna? Is this natural for us? I mean, is it the right path to go down the technological way, or do we find more natural kind of sources to maybe take, gratitude from, or find some other purpose? Maybe social media isn't the right way. Maybe there's alternatives, And I know it's a very broad statement, and you might ask, what are them alternatives? I mean, we don't know, but have we looked at any alternatives?
Exactly. Have we taken the time to say, okay, well, we've got all this technology, but could it be used in a better way where people are more inclusive of what they've got around them, instead of just using this technology to become so independent and dependable on technologies? What it's doing mentally is killing people. It really is.
And I think that we should be using technology as a way of helping us understand and be grateful for all the natural things that are in the world. I say that, all the natural things in the world, but take some, have some respect for our natural world, and we should be using technology to kind of encourage us to go out there and explore and kind of explore the depths of the earth,
because that's what civilization was built on. So
the idea of exploring, going out, looking beyond, looking beyond the sunrise, and imagining that there could be a new world out there that we don't know about. This is what we want to do, and it's something natural to us, and I think we should be. And I know people will say we're using technology for that, but I think people themselves, the normal day-to-day person, isn't thinking about that, and I think we need to be encouraging that.
Definitely. You think people nowadays are waking up early, first thing they're doing is checking their phones. What's new in the news? They're going online. You think newspapers themselves are a thing of the past. You don't see people going to the shops and buying newspapers anymore. You see people going on their tablets, going on their phones. They're calling people. Nothing's face to face, and even the traditions, shall we say, of buying a newspaper seem to have just gone out the window.
Yeah, but this is the younger generation, isn't it? I mean, I still see a lot of older gentlemen, on the bus maybe, or kind of in a McDonald's or anything. I see them with a newspaper, but you'll never see someone who's 19, 20 years old with a newspaper sitting at the bus stop. You never see that, and it shows that it's just different times that we've been growing up in. I mean, what would you say is the better time? I mean, I love the internet for the access of information. I love that, but obviously with that, there is a lot of phony information. I mean, an example of this is my little sister who's on YouTube. Jack obviously knows about this. And this is a prime example to show that, you need to be watching what your children are watching. And she was on YouTube, and she suddenly became scared as she'd seen a video that maybe she shouldn't have seen. It wasn't anything, grim or anything like that. It was just like a kind of scary character on a YouTube video.
For the purpose of trying to scare kids.
Yeah, for the purpose of trying to scare kids. And it scared her, and she's been finding it hard to go upstairs by herself and sleep and everything. And this was kind of a wake-up call to me. I've been listening to a lot about the dark net and how people are using technology to blackmail people. And, you realise how common this thing is. And you need to keep children educated about this. And this is where we talk about technology as a threat. Technology can be very dangerous if it's not known how to be handled. It's like anything. If someone like me or you picks up a gun, we don't know what to do with that. We might think we know, press the trigger, bang, bang. But it's not as simple as that. And it's the same thing with technology. If we aren't taught to use it correctly, it's never going to be used correctly.
And it's almost like trying to handle two societies. Then the society you've got online, where people are almost, you could say, building a fake persona, and then you've got the other society where in everyday interaction you've got to try and control them as well. If you can't control it in person, what's to say they can control it online?
Well, it's another point actually that about the persona thing you were saying. It's a point that Jordan Peterson actually raised, was when people interact with each other on Twitter, one of the problems is I don't know how many characters there are allowed in a tweet, but obviously it's about 200 or so. And so you're obviously limited on the amount of room you've got to make your point. And one of the things is that you talk to people as you know them. They could be complete strangers, but if you were in person with these people, you would not speak to them in the same tone, in the same way. And we talk to people online as if we know them, like they're our buddy. And there's no kind of, they don't feel like a stranger per se.
Yeah, you almost get that confidence that you don't have in person, because if you used to see that same person walking down the street, you wouldn't say a thing.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It kind of creates a false confidence, and I think this is why people get so ego boosted, because online, I mean, I've met people, and you've met people, Jack, who online, I mean, they seem like the most confident people. They're going to talk to you. They're going to be crazy. You're going to have a great night with these people. You meet them in person, and they are the most shy people
they won't say a thing.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show the effects of social media and technology. And I think we've only seen this technology for about 10-15 years really kick into place, when we've had these social medias introduced as well. I think in another 10-15 years time, it's kind of scary to think where it could be at, because of the effects it's had now. What's the effect going to be in another 10 years time, when people are constantly at the rate or they are now, looking on the phone every day? And for people that have iPhones, you can actually check on the settings, and it shows you how much you pick up your phone every day and how much screen time you have. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure there is one for Android too, so you can go and check that out in your settings. I have Android, Jack has Apple, so obviously Jack knows about the Apple. So yeah, on Apple there is an option there, so you can see how much time you're spending. It's important to know as well, because you probably won't realise how much time you're spending.
And it can be quite scary. You think, wow, this time, and you can. And we encourage for people to try and use the time they spend on their phone to read and do things that humans have been doing for a long time that they don't really do nowadays. And it would be good to try and get people reading, because that'll just help them grow as well and help them learn. We think we've really started to read ourselves this year, haven't we? And we've really seen the beneficial sides of it, haven't we?
Yeah, it's something that really calms the mind. I was talking about this with someone else earlier, and talking about how it's really good to just calm your mind. Your mind gets full of all these ideas and all these different problems that are going on, and these worries, and sometimes there's just so much tension in your mind that you just can't deal with it, and you need some time just to kind of chill, relax, and ease your mind and kind of release the pressure. And reading tends to be very good for that, calming your mind, settling you down, relaxing you, and getting you to a state where you can actually be quite content. So yeah, we would always encourage it. And one of the things you want to think about is when you're looking at that, how many hours you're spending every day. Let's say you were spending 6 hours screen time on your phone. Think in them 6 hours, one is that you've taken your head away from reality per se. You're not looking out to what's in front of you. You're 6 hours of your day, your just head's down
between you and this screen.
Yeah. Two is think about how much more productive you could be if you were doing something within them 6 hours. I mean, think of everything that you could do in them 6 hours. I mean, I'm a guitarist. I take photos. So there is a lot of things that I could be doing with them screen time. Right, sorry about that, guys. It actually cut off there, the mic. But we were coming near to the end of our conversation anyway. I just wanted to say a big thank you, guys, for listening to this Souls Podcast 3. We've really enjoyed making these first few podcasts, and we've been finding it really fun. We've been learning a lot of stuff on the way, haven't we? We're kind of new to this. We're trying our best to kind of keep it versatile, keep the subjects different, and kind of, try and make this a platform for everyone, So yeah, thank you guys for listening and showing the support. Be great to, if you want to subscribe, links for the first two will be in the description if you haven't already checked them out. But give them a watch if you haven't already. Thank you for the support, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you guys.